recetas. What does that say?
Well, that's considered
Pretty cool though. I love that steeple. They really maintain it well.
Nice.
We have to come and remove you. Now you don't like the military. But you sure like us when the Native Americans are frustrated because they're unhappy with people squatting on their land, or because they're not happy that the government has taken their land. And they don't think it's fair. So they have a little insurrection or a little rebellion, or the hard work that doesn't get a lot of praise for what they've done. He made a deal with the Menominee or the Ho-Chunk for some land up the Wisconsin River near the Wisconsin Rapids. He went up there and the Indians said you can have that land. He went up there and built a shingle mill. So they're making shingles, a sawmill, making shingles. Now, David Twiggs, who I mentioned, this nasty commanding officer, he's at Fort Winnebago. He hears about it. Whitney is not on land that has been ceded to the United States government and then purchased, by him. So he has no right to be on that land. You can't personally make a deal with the Menominee or Ho-Chunk, right? So he goes up there and he busts up the entire operation. In fact, at that point in time, they're building Fort Winnebago, and he's like, wow, look at all these shingles. He takes all the shingles and brings them back for Fort Winnebago. And then he arrests, Whitney's not there at the time, right? But, he has his workers there. They're arrested. So when Whitney finds out about it, he's like, I have a legal right to be there. I made a deal with Ho-Chunk, and sues him. Sues the United States government and David Twiggs personally. It ends up in court. So that happened all the time. But just one example, and there's many more of that situation. Well, I want to thank you for being a part of this and coming out today and helping us to celebrate Fort Howard and the soldiers that served here. And once again, thank you to all of our veterans for your service. Feel free to visit any of the buildings if you haven't yet, or if you have any other additional questions. I guess I'm the renowned local historian about Fort Howard, which they said. But I do love it, and we'll be glad to share any more information about the fort or the people here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
These are my leggings and a breech club, so to just cover your privates. But your linen shirt is always down. And then you'd wear your sash.
Good morning, folks.
Morning.
Close to winter, so we got our coat.
So
If it was
French Canadian
summer, we would
employees would have been issued ox-hide shoes, and that's what they were issued as employees. But French Canadians that came out here and lived during the winter months, a lot of them intermarried with Native American Indians. So they became part of the community, and they adopted a lot of Native American dress. So what you see here, what I'm wearing is pucker toe style moccasins.
Aren't those cold?
They are cold. Indian leggings, and I'm also wearing underneath all of this is a breech cloth. So what you see on our heads, these are called toques. This was basically the status symbol of a French Canadian voyageur. They show up in trade inventories all the way up until the 1840s. The coats that we're wearing, these are either called blanket coats or capotes. You take a blanket such as this that's laying here, you cut it up and you make it into a garment. Essentially, that's what they would have worn during the winter months to stay warm. We don't have... Yes, and I even have little flower petals.
Oh my
God.
So, what are those
Those are wool, are they?
This is all wool. Yep. So
This is that's a little bit later. This is kind of a heavier.
Yeah, this is a heavier.
you guys can come up here if you'd like and take a look. I don't know if you guys caught what we were saying, but we're
It's amazing how wool,
French Canadian
all kinds of weather, whether
voyageurs
you're
that decided
in a
to
rainstorm,
stay in winter
snowstorm,
when the bay was
wet, dry, it
A lot of these
just keeps
guys
you warm.
got hired in Montreal,
Even in
Quebec,
if it's
and were
80
basically
degrees,
employees for about
it just
6 to
breathes
7
well.
years.
Right.
Keeps,
Like cotton
keeps the sun
does,
off
but
it.
There was
cotton
quite a
doesn't
few of them that decided to stay out here.
What are you guys cooking over there?
Peas, glorified
Peas?
pea soup. It'll be a mash. We'll put salted pork and then some hard biscuits.
So a lot of our
Usually after we were done paddling for 14, 16 hours, we would set up camp, get the fires going, get the dried peas in, add before you'd go to bed. At night you'd add in the pork and the biscuits, and then you let it simmer all night because we would leave out at 3 in the morning.
3 in the... Oh.
For 14, 16 hours a day, we'd paddle, and that's about 60, 70 miles.
It's
So, this was ready in the morning, but they wouldn't eat it for breakfast. They wouldn't eat breakfast. So they left at 3 in the morning. They would probably paddle, they call it 3 pipes or 4 pipes every hour. They would stop for 5 minutes to have a pipe, smoke break.
Got it?
And then by maybe 3 or 4 pipes, which would probably be about 8 in the morning, then they would stop for breakfast. And they'd have what was left, from the night before, their mash, and then they would start paddling again. And by 2 in the afternoon, they would stop for a lunch break. Usually it was maybe some hardtack, pemmican, or biscuits, whatever they had.
Nice.
Then they would paddle to dark because they usually left from Montreal May 1st and get to Michilimackinac.
Montreal to Michigan, yeah?
Yeah, it's usually by mid-June, and then they would take the larger canoes, transfer into smaller canoes, and come down to Green Bay or the Bay in various outposts around Wisconsin. So,
Got it.
but that was a long journey.
That was a long ways.
Yeah, 16, and then you had to portage over land, then you had to unload the cargo and carry it,
Yeah. And those were the canoes that were using back in the days?
Pretty close.
Pretty close to that one?
The canoe de Nords were the smaller ones. They were about 25 feet long. The canoe de Maîtres were the big semis.
Okay.
They were like 36 feet long, could carry 4 tons of cargo, and they were birch bark, and then 16 men.
Were in
Yeah,
there.
you'd have a bowsman or a bond, a governor was the stern rudder guy, then the paddlers in the middle with all the cargo in there.
Wow.
Can you
That's...
imagine that?
My
Then you had
goodness.
to- when you had to portage, you had to carry all that stuff, plus your canoe for sometimes a half mile, sometimes 20 miles.
Oh my God.
So they would, every half mile they carry 190-pound packs on their back, with a
Ah.
tump line on their forehead, and then they would drop it and then have to go back, pick up another load, carry it again.
Come
until they
back.
got to
Oh my
water,
goodness.
And then load it back up, canoe.
It's a lot of work.
And a lot of them suffered from spinal, neck injuries, hernias, killed a lot of voyageurs, drowning.
Yeah.
So it was a tough life. It was kind of a young man's game, but there was some guys still in their 40s.
Got it.
I'm
And
50, so
Máquina.
I'm going to retire. I got 2 hernias, and of course hernias back then you died from.
Yeah.
There was no surgery.
No surgery for that. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was a painful death for them.
Poor things, yeah.
And then
I go all over up and down the lake doing historical vlogs, videos,
the spine. I mean, they had
and stuff like that. So
blown out discs. It was just brutal.
It was brutal, yeah. So what kind of skins? So we got some foxes over here. Fox.
Raccoon,
Okay.
skunk, a marten, a fox, and that is then the all sought after beaver pelt and the muskrat,
Oh.
and then the river otter,
Oh, beaver. Oh, that's what that is. Okay, got it.
and then dried corn, which was the natives, the Indians would trade not only the pelts, but they had dried corn, wild rice,
Got it.
maple sugar, so they would trade, come in the
there's a lot of people don't know that
in the
Revolutionary
spring
War stuff
with
is
the-
going on here too.
with all their pelts, and then they'd trade for metalworks, textiles, blankets.
They allied themselves with the
In the French fur trade area, rum was legal. They could, the Indians bought a lot of the rum.
The rum. Got it.
Food items, farm implements, beads,
Weapons. Yeah.
and weapons, muskets. So like 10 beaver pelts, they could buy a musket, or, trade for a musket.
Traded, yeah.
So there was, the merchants here, or they call them the merchants, were
Got it.
or the clerks. They set the price for what Montreal the merchants
Okay.
demanded. Plus, there was a profit margin, but they used all all the goods came from all over Europe and all over the world, like the silk from the Orient, vermilion, and some finer textiles came from the Orient. A lot of the wools and linens came from England, Ireland,
Okay.
Scotland.
Got it.
The beads, the glass beads, which the Indians just loved, from Italy.
From Italy. No kidding. Good.
And then they would make their way down to the trading posts, to the clerks, and then they trade for the pelts. Pelts would go back to Montreal, shipped over to Europe for beaver pelts were made
Beaver
into
pelt.
hats.
Nice. Those fancy ones.
Round
right?
hats, top hats, women's hats, because the underfur was what they got rid of the long hair or the fur out of there, and then they got rid of the lining in the back, but they kept the soft underfur,
Got it.
which they felted, and that made formed into hats. It was waterproof. It held its form. They were long lasting. A hat could last you 20 years.
20 years,
'cause
yeah.
They were just
Long
that
lasting.
good. And the muskrat was similar. Once the beaver were extirpated out of the area here, then they had to rely on the muskrat, because they hunted the beavers out of here by about 1810. So about
They're almost
200
as-
years, the fur trade was a viable, lucrative business.
Yeah.
And it changed the lives of the Indians around here. They actually depended on
Depending on that.
the.
So what kind of coat do you have
So
here?
this is
Let's
wool.
see here.
This is a broadcloth
Yeah.
called a capote. So in the cold winter months, usually we would be done. We would be done by July. We'd be back home in Montreal to our farms.
Okay.
But there were certain voyageurs or engagés that stayed in the backcountry over
Okay.
the winter. Now they continued because they had a license. If you didn't have a license from France or Great Britain, you were called a cordois, meaning you were doing illegal trade.
Illegal
So
trades.
You can get
Got
in
it.
trouble. But so in the warm, the colder months, we would have a capote. But typically, we only had in the summer when we were in our canoes. We usually didn't have breeches. We were pretty well naked. We had
Okay.
a breech clout,
Okay.
cover your privates, a long shirt with
Okay.
a sash. And then you had moccasins or boots that you could slip on because you're in and out of the canoe.
In and out, yeah.
So you could
Oh,
slip
that's
those
right,
on. You
slipping
could take
on.
your leggings off when you went through the water.
Cold
Get
water?
back in very cold water.
Oh my God.
Then your legs would be freezing, but you could put your leggings back on, and they slip down pretty fast. And then and same with your slippers and your boots.
Oh my goodness.
And then basically you had your toque, and sometimes you'd have a waistcoat, like in the winter months, and then just then a neck cloth, and
Very nice.
pretty simple.
Nice. And nice warm tea
Tea or coffee, yeah.
with a little bit of
A
booze.
little rum in there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
With a bottle of rum.
Cheers.
But can you imagine a
Happy Veterans Day, guys. Nice.
Canadians in Montreal, and every single one of them had a red hat like this, all pointed top. So those are original paintings that were done at the time. So we know at least 1770s what we're portraying, that these things were still popular.
Very authentic.
And these guys were just, the description of these paintings are just regular civilians. They didn't even mention that they were fur traders or voyageurs. They just were meandering around. So, it must have been adopted into civilian society as well.
It had to be.
So, but there's accounts of these guys wearing these hats during the middle of summer too.
Oh.
You know, when it's hot out. Sometimes they would wear like headscarves to keep the sweat off their eyes and stuff
that's
like
right.
that. But especially in the wintertime, these things come into handy. Especially when we sleep outside, these things are very
I would imagine.
Yeah, they look nice and comfy.
They do. And trap the heat the way that they're peaceful
Intended
like
to
that.
be.
So the cool thing about these hats is they're a reproduction of a hat that was found on a sunken French ship in Canada.
Really?
Yeah. So they're reproduced off of that original that was found on this ship.
No kidding.
See, that's the part I love to hear.
Yeah.
You don't hear about the commercial side, that how
Yep.
it came to be.
Yep. So those, and what's cool is that ship came from France.
Huh.
So these hats were, at least part of them, or some of them were coming from continental Europe,
Absolutely.
coming to Canada.
To Canada.
be
That's
sold
really
to
cool.
their
Canadian brothers.
Trade.
civilians.
Yeah. For trading. That's
But
nice.
yeah, I've read accounts even of guys in the 1830s down in Milwaukee that talk about wearing red milled caps. They're the same thing. So which is fascinating that even the Americans adopted them for the fur trade.
Absolutely.
So it just blows my mind when I read that, an American guy in Milwaukee working in the fur trade buying a red milled cap.
And because that was an ambition, it was
Yep.
a desire to be part
Yep.
of that tradition. Yeah, that's great.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Yeah, they do. This is really cool stuff. Look at that. Oh,
We've got one of the best places out here.
Oh, I know.
This is our favorite.
Come on in, warm your bones.
burn your bone. Yeah, that's nice. So this is where they used to hang the meats and all that, right?
And pelts. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind living here. That's really cool. Tobacco leaves. This is how the beds used to be. Oh my.
Stepping here, it's like stepping back in time.
Yes, it is.
When we didn't have the road there with all those cars.
Yeah, we're talking about that on our way out here.
Yeah.
But can't have it perfect.
So heating water here, then cooking where, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Last time we came, you guys were cooking. What were they cooking?
They were
Potatoes?
making a soup over the fire.
Oh yeah, they were.
Yeah, we're out here for one of the like the votive walk, the December thing.
That's really cool.